Well, hello and welcome to the Stable Foursquare Mancast. As you can see, I have a great guest here. It's my friend Joe Witwer. I've been learning from Joe for nearly the last 30 years.
We're not that old.
Yeah, of who you are and what you've done. You know, pull out maybe a little mic a little closer to the mouth of Joe. There we go. Perfect. Good? Yeah, nailed it. So, Joe, this is kind of a man cast. The guys in our church. What I like about you is you're a man's man, but you're also deeply emotional. We're going to ask you some questions, but can you kind of give our guys just a kind of snapshot of who is Joe Witwer?
Well, married to Elena for 50 years.
There you go.
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of her that she stayed with me. Got 5 kids, 1 in heaven, 4 here on earth that are married, and 11 grandkids. All of them love Jesus.
That's awesome.
I'm really happy about that. Yep. And all but one of them are deeply involved in our church, and that's great. And let's see, I'm founding pastor of Life Center, started it 48 years ago. Yeah, I actually kind of restarted it. Yeah, I went to an existing church, had about 40 people. I tell folks that I was not what they were praying for, and they voted with their feet.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. And fun fact for you, I knew you grew up in the thriving metropolis of Sweet Home, Oregon.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about Sweet Home. I've been through Sweet Home. Like, what was the highlight of growing up in a logging town of Sweet Home, Oregon? How many people were in Sweet Home when you were?
There were about 4,000 or 5,000 when, in the city limits.
Yeah.
Our high school had about 1,000 students in it, which made us,
That's a pretty big town.
Well, it was the upper level of, for sports. And I played football, basketball, and baseball. And the problem was we were in the Valley League. And the Valley League was, next biggest school was Lebanon. And we had 1,000 students in 4 grades. They had 1,503, which means they were twice as
better,
big.
And stronger.
Twice as big, yeah. And you went from there up to Albany, and then up to Corvallis, and then up to the Salem schools. Yeah, so we regularly got our butts kicked.
There you go.
I mean, we got trounced pretty handily.
It's good character development.
Oh, that's why I'm the man I am. Yeah, because I got beaten so badly.
Now, a little bit. I think just a little context. Now, you didn't grow up in a Christian home. How did you meet Jesus?
So I'm the oldest of 6 kids, 5 younger sisters. My dad was an alcoholic. He was a cop for a lot of years and then got out of that largely because of the drinking. So did not grow up in a Christian home. When I was 13, I had a buddy knock on my door on a Saturday morning, asked me to go to a youth rally at his church. I did not want to go. Last thing I wanted to do on Saturday night was go to church. I thought church was boring. But I'm also a people pleaser, and I didn't want to disappoint my friend. So I said, okay, grabbed a couple other junior high buddies and walked down to that little church, and I tell people I was ambushed by Jesus. I mean, there was a speaker that night, name of Sam Owen, who was a college guy, athlete, and talked about Jesus like I'd never heard him talked about, very real terms. He was funny, he was warm, he was engaging. And when the whole thing was over, my buddies and I were going to go party, but I said, I'm going to go home. I walked home. I can take you to the spot in Sweet Home, walk up this little hill where I prayed my first prayer and said, okay, God, I don't know much about you. All I know is what that guy has, I want. So here I am. And I love to tell people, the heavens parted, a light beamed down, a voice said, you're my beloved son. Yeah, none of that happened. I went home, I went to bed, I woke up the next morning, and I thought, what do I do now? And the only thing I knew about Christians was what?
They pray and read the Bible, go to church.
They go to church. Yeah, they go to church. It's Sunday morning, so I walked back down to that little church, went to the middle school Sunday school class where we sang Michael Rowed the Boat Ashore, and If I Had a Hammer. And and my life started to change. And I was just asked recently in a small group I was in, they said, think of one small decision you made that had huge impact. And the decision I thought of was getting up that morning, deciding to walk back down to that little church.
To go to church that first morning.
Because if I hadn't, that little tiny flame of faith that had been birthed in me the night before probably would have gotten quickly snuffed out. But the fact that I went there, I immediately had friends that surrounded me and that nurtured that flame of faith, and it grew quickly.
I love that. That's so great because, often Jesus tells a story of the sower, right? We plant the seed and some grows deep and some falls on the soil. And we often think of the condition of the soil as our hearts. but also God plants seeds, but we have a responsibility to get up and go to church to make that happen. And I think that's just a great, even for a 13-year-old young man, just be like, I'm going to do this. And
that was life-changing.
Yeah, and change happens. I think God wants to do great things in us, but isn't it amazing? He's always looking for a partner.
Yeah.
In his transformational work in our lives.
And what was so interesting too was I had, multiple young friends my age in that church who, like I said, kind of took me under their wing. One of them, a kid named Nat, he was the one who asked me, "Are you reading the Bible every day?" And I said, "Well, I tried." And I had a King James Bible that my grandmother had given to me from Christmas when I was in the 4th grade. I'd never cracked it open.
You were so excited that Christmas morning when you, thanks, Grandma.
Oh, yeah. But I had opened it up, since I'd become a Christian. And you start reading in Genesis, and I mean, I got to chapter 5 and it's all these begats. I didn't know what a begat was, but everyone seemed to have one and it seemed pretty important. But it was also King James. I couldn't really get it. And so I told my friend Nat, I said, I've tried, not really good. And so he gave me Good News for Modern Man, New Testament. And I started reading. And a couple months later, Nat said, "Are you tithing?"
I love this story.
I said, "I don't have a tithe." He said, No, not tithe, tithe. I said, "What's a tithe?" He says, "You give 10% of your income to God." I said, "I'm in the 8th grade. I don't have income." He said, "Sure you do." And so I started tithing because of that. And then a month later, he says, "Are you ready to get baptized?" And true story, I hadn't seen a baptism yet. So I said, "What's that?"
Yeah.
And our baptism was embedded in the wall up in front of the church and with a plexiglass. I thought it was an aquarium and the fish had died.
The aquarium in the church.
Yeah. And he said, "We're going to dunk you in that tank." I said, "Why would you do that?" And he said, "Because Jesus said to." I said, "Oh, okay." And I got baptized. But the point was, I learned all those things from an 8th grade kid.
Yeah.
Who took it upon himself to just...
And he probably didn't know a whole lot more than you.
No.
He just taught you whatever he knew, right?
He knew, yeah. And I thought, there's discipleship 101 right there.
For sure. I think we so overcomplicate it, guys, of like, oh, if I'm going to be a Christian, I've got to be a pastor. I've got to be a spiritual leader of my home. After church today, you spoke this morning in our services, and met a guy, Stephen. He says, "Man, I want to get baptized. We're doing baptism." And he goes, "I want to baptize my daughter." And I was like, "Man, I'm so proud of you." He started talking about what God's doing in his life. As for me and my house, he goes, "Yeah, I'm supposed to be the religious leader of my home." I love it's just raw, like, hey,
it's raw.
I don't know but I'm supposed to do this. Yeah. And I think, isn't that God really honors I think I'm supposed to do this? Mm-hmm. That's much better than like, I don't know what to do, so I do nothing.
Nothing, yeah. No.
Reject passivity. That's one of the things I think. If a 13-year-old Joe can do it.
Yeah.
And, the 50 years of pastoring.
Yeah.
This church, you were a youth pastor for years before that. I just think of the thousands of people that have met Jesus, been discipled because a 13-year-old kid said, "Hey, invited you to an event."
Yeah. Yeah. I tell that story all the time at our church, and this, our little deal is called Find, Tell, Bring, right? Yeah. Find someone you love, tell them what you know, and bring them with you. It's really simple. And that came out of John chapter 1, where Andrew did that with Peter, and Philip did it with Nathaniel, and John 4, the one with the well, does it with their neighbors. So you just find someone you love, tell them what you know, bring them with you. And that's what my friend Don did to me, right? Knocking on my door that Saturday morning, come with, and it changed my life. And so I'll tell that story, and I'll always end with that idea, like, hey, if a 13-year-old junior high boy can do it, you can do it. It's not
Joe,
that hard.
I don't know if you know this, but this morning I saw a bunch of our middle school kids. Josh, who's our middle school pastor and family pastor, he heard you give that talk years ago.
Yeah.
And all of our middle school kids, that's their logo on their T-shirts, Find, Tell, and Bring.
Yeah.
So even what happened in Sweet Home, Oregon is now having effect in the thriving metropolis of Stanwood, Washington.
Yes.
It continues on. Well, that's so good, Joe. Hey, one of the things I have watched from afar is your leadership in developing young people. I've just seen you do that, even from, you were leading a substantial church of multiple thousands of people for a lot of years, but raising up the next generation has always been so close to you. And we have a lot of guys who are in their 30s themselves. I don't think they feel capable to raise up their next generation or even to parent their kids, but they find themselves in managerial. You stick around a job long enough and they make you a manager. How have you done that? What would you give advice to someone who's just wanting to be a godly leader and really develop people? How do you start even that process? What's the first step of just, how do I develop people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the Apostle Paul wrote to the Corinthians and he said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Follow me as I follow Jesus. And so he offered them, he didn't offer them a workbook or a fill in the blanks or a course they needed to read. He offered them a living example. And the thing about, well, I'll say it this way. A lot of us would be hesitant to say that to someone else.
Yeah.
Just follow me as I follow Jesus. Watch what I do and do it.
Seems a little scary.
Yeah, and why? Because we're imperfect.
I'm not so proud of all of my actions.
Exactly. But do you know what? That's part of following Jesus too. What do you do when you mess up? What do you do when you fall flat on your face? What do you do when you say something stupid? Well, you apologize. You own it. You pick up and you keep going. That's what you do. You man up, right? Yeah. And that's part of following me as I follow Christ too. And so anyway, I think we come back to that really fundamental idea that nurturing and development and growth all happens in a context of relationship. And I'll just back up a little bit and say this, that it's probably been 30 years ago now, a couple of my other leaders and I were asking the question about this. We were saying, hey, we are growing young leaders and we're doing it kind of by accident.
Yeah. We actually put some purpose behind this.
Yes. Yeah. What if we intentionalize this? And so we thought, how could we do that? So we're in farming country over there in Spokane, surrounded by farmland. And the farmers every year will analyze the soil. They'll figure out, here's the crop I'm going to plant.
Yeah.
It needs these kind of nutrients. So here's what I got to put in the soil, right, in terms of fertilizer. Mm-hmm. And the idea is all they're doing is accelerating nature's process.
Yeah.
Here's what this soil needs to have to produce this crop. And so we laughingly called that the poop principle, right?
How much manure do we need?
How much manure do we need to get the crop we want? And the idea is all we're doing is intentionalizing a natural process. And by intentionalizing, we're accelerating it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question was, what's the process look like? And here's what we did. It was really fun. We kind of spread out. There were several of us, and we each called different leaders, about half dozen leaders each. And we just asked them, we said, how'd you become a leader? And just asked questions and listened to their story. And as we listened, we heard the same three things over and over. Every single person identified these three things. And the first one was relationships. They all identified people who basically were examples, models, inspiration, encouragement, whatever. But they identified key people. And almost everyone had more than one key person. So the relationship was first. The second thing was someone gave them an opportunity.
Yeah.
Someone saw something.
Opportunity.
Yep. Someone said, hey, I need someone to lead this. It's yours. Take it and run with it. Yep. And usually it was an opportunity that was a little beyond them.
Yeah, a little scary.
Yeah, a little scary, stretched out of their comfort zone, right? So relationship, opportunity. Then the third thing was training. And the training, this was what was fascinating. The training was all over the map. Everything from college degrees to one-on-one mentoring to just watching somebody, observing, all reading a book, being in a small group. It was all over the map. And then the fascinating, so we saw those three things. And then, of course, now we're alerted. We look back to Scripture. Yeah. And what do you see in Mark chapter 3? Jesus calls his disciples and he picks 12 of them. And it says he picked 12 of them to be with him.
Yeah.
What's that? It's relationship. Yeah. And then he sent them out to heal the sick and to preach the gospel. What's that? Opportunity.
Got to risk the biscuit.
There you go. And when they came back, they would talk.
Debrief it. What went well, what didn't go well.
Yep. And there's the training.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because in our Western academic model, what do we naturally gravitate to first?
The training.
The training, yeah. And we want to sit people in classes and stuff their heads full of information. And sometimes we paralyze them. Yeah. And I've jokingly said that, when I was trying to teach my church to do evangelism back in the early 80s, I actually created a 12-week course on evangelism with an inch-thick notebook. And every week I gave them stuff to add. And at the end of the 12 weeks, I learned I hadn't equipped them. I'd paralyzed them. Because they all looked at that and said, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If that's what it takes to do this, I'll never master all that. Let Joe do it. And that's when we dumped that and we found fine-tailed brain.
Yeah.
And went, oh, everyone can do this.
Well, I think discipleship, spiritual things, we tend to put it in the realm of the intellect, or like if we're talking about vocation, right?
Yeah.
We tend to think like that's the white collar kind of work.
Yeah.
And blue collar work. And what you're really saying is probably the discipleship model is more of a blue leadership, even at its very core, is more of a blue collar process than a white collar theory of apprenticeship. So. Like, all right, we're going to give you enough training to do this job, but you're not going to know how to do everything, but you got to start here. You can become a journey, and then you work your way up through the process. Yeah. And I think even in spiritual life, in our life of a disciple of, I think men put so much pressure on themselves to, I got to have it all figured out. I got to have the Bible verses memorized. Yeah. I got to know what they're saying about in Genesis chapter 6 about the antediluvian women. And, or they get so fascinated, they spend all their time doing that. So, but yeah, just what's the next right step to do? What's the, how do I just follow the Lord today? Who's somebody who's a little farther ahead? Who's in relationship? And isn't that relationship too, Joe? I want to enter your finding is I think a lot of times we think, oh, that relationship should be somebody pursuing me.
Yeah. No, it goes both ways, obviously, because there could be people that approach you that could say, hey, would you mentor me or disciple me or just hang out with me? And that's awesome. But Jesus called people, right? He didn't wait. None of the 12 picked him. He picked them.
Yeah.
And so I think, if you want to be someone that develops other people, it starts with a relationship first. Yeah. And you're calling people into that relationship. I think of Jesus calling the 12. But I also think of Acts 16 when Paul found Timothy. Yeah. And he shows up there and Timothy's well spoken of by everybody and Paul's impressed. And what's Paul do? He says, come with me. Come with me. Yeah. And he just takes him on the journey. And out of that journey, Timothy ends up becoming a pastor. Yeah.
I from my experience, I think a lot of men are waiting to be called by somebody. Yeah. But the challenge is they're probably in the place of they should be the ones that are calling people. And I put it simply, like my mom, I remember in elementary school, I was like, I didn't feel like I had friends. And I remember my mom told me this, if you want to have a friend, be one. Be a friend. Yep. And I think if you want to be developed as a leader, you got to develop, all you have to do is show somebody what you know. Was it Andy Stanley says this, it's not that I have to fill your cup, I just have to empty my cup. And we're always I think we often are waiting. I spent a lot of my years waiting for someone to see me, to see my genius. To invite me into like a rabbi to say, Tim, I see such greatness in you. Come and follow me. Before we recorded, we were talking about, we came from a similar church background where we did some of our training, and I never had the senior leader there ever. I don't think he even saw me, but other people did. Yes. And I could have waited around, and probably my personality, I'm glad I didn't wait around for him to see me because I think I would have missed out on I was like, I got to find it for myself. Yeah. So I think that's an encouragement. Yeah. Like, don't just wait to be developed, develop people. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that, on that whole Paul and Timothy thing, I think it's a great way to look at yourself from both sides of that equation. To say, who is someone that's not as far along as I am, that I could come alongside and encourage, mentor, develop, just form a relationship with someone. Could be younger, could be older than you, but just are new to Christ, But it's what my 14 or 13-year-old buddy did with me in middle school, right? So who could I help come along? And then who's investing in me? Who would I like to do that with? And find someone, and again, and this is dicey, right? Because you may go and say, hey, I'd love to do this. And they might go, ooh, too much. Yeah. Well, for years, I had guys ask me to mentor them. I didn't even know what they meant for sure. Yeah, what are you expecting from me? So here's what I would suggest. It's real simple, is if there's someone you'd like to invest in you, ask that person, could I take you out to lunch on such and such a time for 90 minutes? I'm going to come with some questions that I want to ask you, and I promise I won't waste your time. And if you do that, that's money. And the chances are that person is going to go away saying, when can we meet again? True. I'd love to do that again. Well, it's part of just a natural thing. When someone asks us a question, it strokes our ego. It makes us feel good about ourselves. Like even Joe, I'll be really honest. Like I was intimidated. You're a legend. And I was like, I don't know if Joe's got time for me. And it took me a while. I had a conversation with you. I said, I want Joe to come. And I'm like, who's Joe? He's not that great. And I made you a call and you've been so honored. Like even just in our response, like, oh, I'm thanking you. And you're like, no, I'm so honored to come. And I realized that's the same for me. Like when I've been invited, you're like,
it is an honor.
Absolutely. I'll come and you want to hear what I have to say? I'll do whatever it takes to be there.
I'm always surprised that anyone wants to hear what I have to say.
You care?
So.
My wife's not intrigued by me, or my kids aren't that impressed. Even my own church doesn't think that. Isn't it fun being a guest speaker? So they think you're so great. Like, they just don't hear your bad sermons, right?
Yeah, well, they say an expert, someone with a briefcase 100 miles from home. So
it's true. It's true. Hey, Joe, one of the things that I have admired so much about you, and this is kind of legend of you, is you're known as the happiest man in the world.
Wow. I didn't know I was known that.
Yes. Well, in the pastor world anyway that we talk about. And in our culture, I've noticed this as men of age, it's kind of the culture of grumpy old men. And that is not at all what the scriptures teach about. It says, even though our outer bodies wither, our inner man is being renewed day by day.
That's right.
But I've seen some great godly men, like I think COVID and all these things, just political stuff, just become like guys who were once my heroes been like, dude, I don't want to be around. You're not fun anymore.
Yeah.
How have you, because not to give you can tell how old you are. I don't want to tell people how old you are. If you want to share that.
74.
74.
Yeah.
So that just gives a context.
Yeah.
How are you a happy 74? I don't want to give you
almost 75.
Almost 75.
Yeah.
How have you maintained that joy? And I think your joy, what I've seen is that joy has allowed you to speak into young people's lives. And my daughter, even I jokingly say that she heard you speak years ago. So memorable because I think it was with joy. She's like, oh, there's a guy that I want to be like, not an old guy who's grumpy and angry at the world. And like, if only you oughta.
Yeah.
How have you been a man of joy?
That's a good question. Well, first I thank my mother. I mean, seriously, my mom is one of the most joyful people I know. Yeah. And I think, there's a little genetic component, right? That I inherited something from her. Yeah, that's good. But, a couple things. One thing that I'd say the first thing is that I have always made, this is going to sound so trite, but I've always made my relationship with Jesus and my own personal development of that a priority. So I read through the Bible every year. I spend time each day journaling, blogging, praying. And a little bit more time now than I used to, just because of that. It's that season in my life, right? Empty house. I can do that. It was harder when the kids were little. But prioritizing that, and the reason I say that's important is every major change in my character and who I am has grown out of those times where the Lord will just speak to me from scripture or confront me in prayer. Or, I could give all kinds of examples that were just, so that's been a profound character shaper. And it really shouldn't surprise us, right? Because you become like who you hang out with.
So if you're hanging out with Jesus.
If you hang out with Jesus, you're going to get changed. Yep. And
now,
so that's been a big
that
thing.
Journaling, with that processing, do you think that has helped you? I've noticed just in even men I really love in our church and even other leaders, they often feel lonely and isolated. And so I think part of that is they don't feel like anybody's asking them or have anybody to process. Do you think that like the grind of like journaling and processing and praying with the Lord has helped you give a place to maybe let that grumpiness out a little bit, the frustration with the world?
That's definitely true. Because when I'm struggling with something, if I'm up in the middle of the night, that's what I'll do. I'll go get my Bible. I'll read.
You wrestle it out with the Lord,
and then I'll journal on that thing I'm wrestling with, and hammer that thing out. And that's what Paul said. He says, "Don't worry about anything, but pray about everything." Philippians 3:6-7, right? Yeah. Let your requests be made known to God with thanksgiving. And then what's he say? And the peace of God that transcends all understanding. Yeah, is going to keep your hearts and minds in Christ. And Roy used to say, my pastor, Roy Hicks Jr., used to say, pray until you get peace.
Pray until you get peace.
Yeah.
Because I've even noticed this in my life, probably the last 5 years. I'm 48.
Just a puppy.
Just a puppy. But my wife and I bought new chairs a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I remember our son was home from college, and I walked in the door, and it was a shocking thought I even had. He's like, he's sitting in my chair. And it's not my chair. I never want to be the guy that has that chair. But it surprised me that I'm getting particular, like the guys I've kind of, one is I think that's probably the natural thing of we like what we like and we don't like. Have you ever just had those moments that shock you? Like,
oh yes.
And that for me, that was a shocking thing. Like, oh my goodness, I don't want to be the person that's mad that my kid who's home from college is sitting in a chair and I'm mad at him because it's mine. And even in that moment, I'm like, Lord, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know how in those moments have you, I don't know, you're still smiling today and I want to be happy and healthy and love Jesus and love my wife and love my kids. And I want other people to love me too and not be like, I don't want to be that guy because all he does is talk about the news. And everything. He's so frustrated with the world. He doesn't understand things anymore. And grumpy old man.
Yeah. Well, you just said a really important thing about, in that moment when you saw your son sitting in the chair, that you had a feeling, but you also had some self-awareness about what you were feeling and the wisdom to pay attention to that, right? You go, okay, you probably shouldn't yell at him, get out of my chair, No,
I was like, I shouldn't even feel that because it's not my chair.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, that self-awareness, some of that comes from spending time with Jesus and just developing that capacity. But I'd also say, so I just gave one thing, right? A spiritual thing.
Yeah.
But I think, I'll back up and say this. I did a webinar, I think last year for Thrivent. I don't know if you're familiar with Thrivent. It's
the financial company?
Yeah, the financial group.
Dude, you're big time. And he's on our podcast, Joe Witwer from Thrivent to the Stanwood Foursquare Mancast.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe we'll find it. We'll link it in the...
Well, yeah, and what they asked me to talk about was longevity in ministry, subtitled, How Do You Stay Happy and Healthy for the Long Run, right? And as I processed that, I realized there's not a secret sauce, right? There's not a single, here's the magic pill, do this, and and I talked about 6 different, I called them levers that only you can pull. And it's the old idea that 80% of what you do, anyone can do, 15% of what you do, a few people could do, 5% of what you do, only you can do.
Yeah.
And so here are 6 things that only you can do. No one else can do them for you. And one is your relationship with Jesus. One's taking care of yourself physically, one's taking care of yourself mentally so that you're growing and not getting calcified in your thinking. Stay curious, stay young in your thinking. One of those is tapping into your emotional awareness. How full is your tank? What fills you up? What drains you? And knowing how to manage those things. Another one is growing your character development and how that happens. There was one more too. I'm sorry, I don't remember it right now. But anyway, the point was that there isn't a single thing that keeps you young and vital. It's a combination of things that you just have to, and that comes back to the self-awareness.
Yeah.
Where am I right now in my life, in my development, in my thinking, and what possibly needs to change? Here's one thing I tell pastors all the time. And I know a lot of our guys are not pastors, but they'll understand this when I explain it. So ministry is a job, but it's also just what you are. You are a pastor, and you can't go anywhere in Stanwood without seeing people you're Pastor Tim.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't go to the grocery store between 3 and 5 o'clock if I need to get in and out of there quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. Because someone's going to stop you and need to talk, and
which is a great gift.
It's wonderful. But the point is that you have to find some way to step away from that and refresh yourself, right? And so one of the things that I've done a good job of is having outside interests. I got a ton of them. In fact, one of my friends said to me once, he said, and he didn't mean it as a compliment. He says, I don't know anybody that has as many hobbies as you do. And I said, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just have a lot of interests, and I enjoy those interests, and they're interests in things that refresh me, right? And so those things replenish me. That's an awareness I have. Like if I catch myself in a little grumpy, it's like, hey, now's not the time to write a sermon, which will be an angry sermon.
Yeah.
Vengeance
is mine, saith the Lord.
Yeah. Now's the time, to go for a hike. Go ride my bike, go lift some weights, go, whatever. But yeah, so the idea again comes back to that self-awareness of these different areas of your life and what might be lacking at any one point. And then the other one too, and you said this already, I meet so many people that are grumpy old men. And I just don't want to be that.
No.
I just don't want to be that. I had a pastor friend who every time I was with him, he was griping about the young people in his church and on his staff. They're lazy, they're entitled, they don't know how to work, Yeah. And what I started doing was every time he would start that, I'd say, dude, the young people in my church are amazing. They love Jesus, and they're all in.
Hardworking.
They're hardworking, and they're giving their all. And he just rolls his eyes, say, okay, yeah, I get the message, Yeah. But that same pastor asked me when he was ready to pass his church on, he asked me to send him one of my young leaders, and I told him I wouldn't. I said, I will not send a young leader to your church unless you leave, because you'll kill him.
You'll taint him with your grumpiness.
With the grumpiness. I didn't want to do that.
One of the things that you said, I've heard you talk about this before too, is the staying curious and learning. And I've seen, I think guys, as they begin to retire too, their worlds get smaller and their algorithms reinforce.
Oh boy.
The world's designed for the algorithm to reinforce what we do, not to learn new things.
Yeah.
How do you, I think you said something about news in the past. You have to evaluate it. And I've just seen people not be able to learn new things because they get stuck in the cycle of, and it's not, I don't want to blame Facebook or whatever it is. But I think the natural thing as we age, we're reinforced in what we believe in. We want to be more comfortable with what we like. And like, I'm even sick that I have a recliner that I actually like so much. Like that's sick. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Probably need to go get rid of those things and sit on a hard stool. To be happy about it. Yeah. But how do you keep so you learn new things so you're not just reinforced by the same things?
Yeah. So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're being discipled by our algorithms. And every time you click on something, it trips an algorithm that says send him more of that, right? Yeah. And so particularly in the political realm nowadays, this is so common that whatever you like, they're going to send you more of it until pretty soon you're living in an echo chamber and becoming, honestly, the worst version of yourself.
And just getting more frustrated.
Oh, you're just going down the rabbit hole. So, there's just a whole lot of stuff that I don't watch, I don't read, and I don't click on.
Did you say you evaluated news? I remember you said, what are the three? How do you evaluate news?
So I would say there's news, which I understand news as here's what happened, right? It's an objective report about what's actually happened. Then there's opinion. That's the second level. And opinion is here's my idea about what happened, my opinion, my thought about that. And then the third level is entertainment. And by the time we get to entertainment, we're not concerned about truth or falsehood.
Yeah, facts.
We're concerned about not concerned about all we're concerned about is ratings and money. And a lot of the shows on the supposed news
on both sides.
Yeah, on both sides. Yeah, this is not just a right or a left. This is both sides. We've abandoned objective truth and trying to be newsworthy. And now it's about ratings and money. And guess what? The more outrageous, the more shocking, the more controversial, the angrier, the more emotion, all of that gets more clicks.
Yeah.
And makes more money. And so I am very particular about what I'll watch and listen to and what I won't. And right away I'll go, wait a minute, this is just some entertainment show that I'm not interested in, as opposed to, and I don't even mind someone's opinion.
Yeah.
But at least they're still talking about, here's what happened, here's my opinion about it.
And I watched so many men especially justify, they think it's news, but it's really entertainment. And they would never watch a movie that would feed them that baloney.
Yeah.
They would not sit and watch violence and hatred all day long, rated R movies, but they justify it like, oh, it's news. And it is not news.
It is not news. No.
It is entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's poisoning our souls.
Yeah, it's poisoning our souls and it's poisoning our nation.
Again, culture,
on both sides, because it's become so toxic, so polarized, that it's very difficult to have an intelligent conversation. When I get engaged in one of these and someone says something outrageous, then my first thought is to just be mad.
Yeah.
And I realize, okay, that's not going to help anything. So my second thought is, okay, let's go from angry to curious. And so in my curiosity, I want to say, I'm curious. Where did you hear that? Where did you get that information? And, we'll talk about sources. And then we'll talk about, are there other sources that might be saying something different than that? And where are they getting their stuff? And so, but just by asking some questions, sometimes you can kind of reframe the conversation so that it's not quite so polarized.
And the scary part, in my experience, is even trying to have those conversations. Like the conversation's already happened. The bitterness is already in the soul. And it's like, you need to go re-meet the Jesus that you claim to love. Mm-hmm. And I think it's making the natural thing of being a grumpy particular man. It's just exacerbating it and to the next level.
In a big way.
And I don't even think it's grumpy old men. It is grumpy 30-year-olds. It's grumpy 20-year-olds. It's grumpy 40-year-olds.
Oh, yeah.
And your kids don't like you and your wife can't stand you. Like literally, it poisons our souls.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that so much. We're going to pause this episode. We're going to come back for a second one with the legendary Joe Witwer. So join us next week for a second episode with Joe.